Force feedback is one of the most important features in your sim rig, and it is crucial to set it up to your taste and crucial to set it up to make you faster. Today's video, it's going to be about how I go around setting up my force feedback. You'd be welcome to disagree in the comments if you find that it's wrong. However, please don't go too personal, no personal attacks, there's really no point for it. This is not an attack in your ego. Remember, force feedback is personal, just like pressing like and subscribe, so go do that because I want to get to 100,000 subscribers and it's really been that long. While the software and wheelbases, of course, will be different between brands, the process is generally much the same between all of them. I have already profiles established at randomcallsign.com. There's a part called settings for a few brands, and those are mostly up to date. But anyways, today's video is brought to you by the channel sponsor, Coach Dave Academy. Coach Dave is an excellent resource for those of you who want to get better at sim racing, including Le Mans Ultimate. Delta has a treasure trove of telemetry data, setups, AI info, and even coaching to help you out getting better, like they have been helping me out. They cover Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing, Assetto Corsa Competizione, and even Gran Turismo 7. Check the link in the description. As you know, every software is different, every firmware is different, and every wheelbase will be different. And force feedback is the connection between the software, the ones and zeros, and the hospital, because you've broken your hands if you go hard enough.
We have some light damage at the rear of the car. Slow car ahead.
Oh my god, my hand!
Force feedback, in essence, is artificial and imperfect, subject to whims of imperfect digital wizards, which themselves are not all-knowing and bring their biases to their model. They are false gods, I tell you. Where I like to start is at the baseline, something that can be a start and then expanded and modified, just like Mazda Miata. What I want as a final product is a mostly undampened, responsive, tactile profile with no strange reverbs through the wheelbase or rig, or any sounds or any grittiness or sharp peaks, and a decent and not over-the-top force feedback strength. The reason is that I want something comfortable yet informative, a force feedback that is easy to turn but not necessarily inexistent. I think, and I may be wrong, you're welcome to disagree, a lighter force feedback is faster. I say this because most tracks will have sequences of corners, sometimes one just after the other, and even sometimes even chickens.
Last chicken, first quick chicken, high chicken.
So let's go at my tactic, and to achieve what I want, I like to start with the baseline of zero damping, zero springs, and zero filter, just per signal to the hands, raw power. So we go to the software, whatever it is, and turn those off. This is done to figure out what is the wheelbase is capable of and what the game is doing to the signal. This way I can start working on altering the profiles for each game. In terms of power, what is generally recommended, and in reality the correct way to do it, is raise the power of the wheelbase to maximum and lower the gain in the sim. While this is technically correct and you can do it yourself, personally I do not recommend it for two reasons. Number one, some wheelbases, especially the smaller ones, when you start to put them at 100%, they'll get heated up too much and they will clip the force feedback. The Mazda R5 and the R9 come to mind. Secondly, and for me it's the most important one, accidents, that would mean with your wheel or in the game, or force feedback bugs, they happen, and when they happen they become quite nasty. Once again, the technically correct way to do it is max it out in the wheelbase. Personally, I do not do it because for me, in this case, it is better safe than sorry. What I do is set the wheelbase to a value I feel comfortable around, which is generally between 10 and 12 Newton meters, which is more than enough, and generally avoids clipping in most sims, in most cases, bar a few edge exceptions. Then from that baseline setup, I ask myself what is happening. If we're playing Assetto Corsa Competizione, the signal is so generally dampened, I do really nothing else. I just add a little bit teeny weeny tiny effects in the sim. That's basically it, like 5 to 10%, no more than that. I turn everything that is a dampener in the game off. That's the way I do it, and because the game is already too dampened, there's nothing more to do. However, for every other game, no matter if it's Assetto Corsa, iRacing, Competizione, Evo, Le Mans Ultimate, whatever you're gonna throw at this, generally at the wheelbases, everything will go more complicated than this, but not too complicated. What I do is start with everything that is in effect at 0, both in game and software, and then I look, or I feel, what the wheel does. If it gets too bouncy side to side or can't stabilize in a straight line, I just add a little bit of damper effect to stabilize it. Dampener has the side effect to add a constant force that counteracts any movement, so too much will definitely stabilize the wheelbase, but also create too much inertia to movement, slowing it down. It's not ideal, but sometimes it may become necessary. Then I check if the force feedback is clipping. That means if the clip is getting red oftentimes, reduce the gain in-game or increase the power in the wheel. Sometimes both will have to happen, and I change these to the point where if it ever clips, it's only when hitting the curbs. Then there's the more complicated stuff, which will be the vibrations, the force feedback feeling, the effects you're going to feel. And you need to ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling some strength through the wheelbase on those vibrations. You have to ask yourself, what type of strength am I feeling on those effects? Strength doesn't mean really much, there's a lot more to it, and you can think of a force feedback signal like an audio signal. You'll have to figure out if what you're feeling is sharp and peaky, and if that's the case, we probably need to smoothen that peak, otherwise it will be too annoying. If the effect numbs the hand and has a reverbing sound almost like metal was rubbing, it means the peaks are definitely way too sharp and we need to smoothen those. Each brand will have their own type or name for the filter. Fanatec calls it interpolation, Simagic filter level, Conspit filter sharpness, for example, and it serves not only for that effect, but also to reduce the rough feeling of low frequency force feedback signals in certain cases. Generally, I do not add a lot of filtering to the signal because it may have, depending how high you go, it may have unintended effects like muddling the signal so much. Some of the effects will be on top of the other and then you do not understand what the hell is going on. So I go high enough to the filters where the signal, if it is too sharp, it becomes a little bit wider at the top so it becomes comfortable, but also low enough that will have a crisp force feedback feeling that I understand a curb is a curb, if the tire is losing grip or anything else is happening in the car. Once the effects are smoothened to my taste, I can reduce the force of the effects if they are too present or with too much amplitude. Normally this is not necessary, but I found with Le Mans Ultimate with the Simagic wheelbase, the Evo wheelbase, this was really necessary, getting the filter to a certain level and then reducing the power of said filter. If you have the ability to change the slew rate, which is how responsive the wheelbase is, I like to start with max values because I want a more responsive wheelbase. Generally, I never had the need to lower when I have that option to lower from the maximum settings, but in some cases it may be too nervous for you at center, or with the peak effect, lowering may help the nervousness of the wheelbase. So this is what I do for racing cars, stuff like GT3s, hypercars, GT4s, you name it. But sometimes this formula doesn't work correctly in certain types of cars, like vintage cars, road cars, or drift cars. So in this case, I try to do a different type of profile so I can better mimic the wheels or the wheel effects that you will see in a real car. If you ever driven a road car, and I have a few, we're actually legal. You'll know that the steering wheel feedback compared to what the wheelbase is able to do actually sucks. It is incredibly dampened. There's really not much information coming through the steering rack of a real car, less so with electric power steering. It's even the case with non-assistant or even hydraulic power steering setups, which supposedly bring more of them feels. I don't want my force feedback to feel exactly like a road-going car, but there are a few things you do want to bring from the road-going car into your force feedback. For those cases, I add a healthy amount of dampening so that feeling is preserved. That in turn also helps with drifting. With drifting, you do want the wheel to have the ability to turn by itself, but at the same time, It can't be auto mode to the point where it starts banging left and right everywhere. I want the wheel movement to be methodical and deliberate, strong but stable. So for those cases, I had a little bit of dampening somewhere in the 5 to 20% range, depending on wheelbase and even car. This will make the wheelbase feel more akin to a road car and make it less nervous when you start moving around. It will impact the force feedback quality a little bit, because dampening does that to your force feedback signal, but not to the point where you start cursing at the car like you were driving a real one.
Carro mau. Carro mau.
So these are a couple of strategies to bring force feedback to life, in my opinion. This is how I do it, how I want it, but let us know in the comments how you do it and how wrong I am.